Basil is always a nice crop to have in your garden. It is a less maintenance and easy to grow crop, but at the same time smells and tastes amazing. Basil, as you might already know, can be grown from seeds. I used to grow a holy basil variety from India from seeds. They need to be started in February if you're living in a cold country like me. They will be planted out after the danger of frost has passed in May, and they grow very well. We all know that. While basil can be grown from seeds, a much more simpler way to grow a ton of basil in your garden or in containers is to buy a small plant of basil from the supermarket for a couple of euros. Here, you think you have just one crop, but in this video, I'll show you how to turn a single store-bought basil into a basil bonanza that will last you for all the season. Whether you are dreaming of an endless batches of pesto or simply love the scent of fresh basil, you are in for a treat. So let's get started. First, let's start with our store-bought basil. These plants are a great starting point because they are usually quite vigorous and ready for some attention. Most of us make the mistake of leaving this basil in the same container, maybe give it a nice cover pot and leave them on a windowsill or on the balcony. But if you look closely, one container has got around 20 to 30 individual plants that can be separated out to become a basil crop of its own. What they usually do is sow some seeds, as we did in February, into a single container for that fuller look. But that won't last for long if they remain in the same container. To maximize the basil, we are going to divide this plant. Find natural divisions in the plant where the stems and roots can easily be separated. You can often get several new plants from one store-bought basil. Gently separate the roots. Each section should have one healthy portion of roots to thrive independently. Now plant each section in its own pot with some good quality potting mix. Basil loves well-draining soil that stays slightly moist. I'm planting mine in these raised beds. Place your basil in a sunny spot. They love sun. They need at least 6 hours of sunlight a day to stay happy and healthy. Give them a good drink of water, but remember, basil doesn't like soggy feet. Make sure your pots have drainage holes to prevent root rot in case you're planting them in containers. What I've noticed is that some of them have been eaten by slugs. All the basil planted on the ground are eaten up by the slugs. In just a few weeks of time, you will see them thrive. Keep the soil slightly moist and water them when the top inch feels dry. Regular watering helps basil maintain its lush and green leaves. Now all we need to do to maintain a healthy growth of basil is to continuously harvest them. It's that easy. To encourage bushy growth, pinch off the top leaves, including the stem, every couple of weeks. This not only makes your plant look fuller, but also prevent it from flowering and going to seed soon. Now remember, this is all from one store-bought basil plant. I try to divide and get as many basil as possible from the container, and one container is sufficient for me for my whole garden for one growing season. I try to stick the basil saplings into every container or bed as possible, as they work as an amazing companion plant for most of the crops like tomatoes, chilies, cucumbers, zucchinis. They are good at keeping pests away, at the same time giving out nice fragrance in your garden. But as you saw before, they do not keep the slugs away. They apparently seem to like its smell and taste. That's something to keep in mind. Once the divided saplings have established on the ground, they can be propagated just by cutting a few stems, removing the lower leaves and putting them in water. Once they have developed roots in water, they can be moved to soil in a small container and later on planted in their final spot. Make sure to keep them watered during these transition phases. This way, you can get even more basil plants for your garden. Every year, I buy one basil plant in a container from the supermarket, and in return, I get tons of basil which I cannot even harvest and use up completely. I use freshly harvested basil in my dishes, but I also try to dry them for future use. That's how much you can harvest out of it. Obviously, they'll not survive the winter. The weather will kill them naturally. Next year, the same procedure continues for me. I don't grow them from seeds anymore, and I find this method much more simpler. And they are super beginner friendly too. I don't give them any special care except regular watering and give them good amount of sunlight. From just one store-bought basil plant, you can create an entire garden of basil. Imagine all the fresh basil you'll have for your recipes and the beautiful addition it'll make to your garden. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you found this video helpful, go get yourself a container of basil from the supermarket and keep growing them. See you in the next video. Bye and take care.